Well, hello, everybody out in Manchester, Hooksett, Auburn. By God, it's 2019. Happy New Year, everybody. This is our first show after a couple of weeks without a show because of holidays and things like that. And very happy to be back with you on the Progress Report, heading into our 10th year, Lou.
Wow.
10 years.
Hey, it's like a minute.
And you have an experience with Manchester media going back far longer ago than that. I remember radio shows, the Lou D'Alessandro show.
Yeah, those were the good old days.
WKBR, was it?
WKBR with Eddie B. Baker.
Yeah.
Who was really an icon in the radio business here in Manchester and really in Massachusetts. And those who remember Eddie remember what a wonderful musician he was.
Really?
He was, a great piano player and great singer. He was a wonderful musician and a great entertainer.
Yeah.
He was a really great entertainer. And he was from Lawrence, Mass. And I knew Eddie for a long, long time. And anyway, he was a fun guy, and he brought me into the radio business. We did a sports show for a while on WKBR, and really had a very good time with it. And then of course KBR was split in half, and the FM side it went to WZID, which has really become, I think, the most popular station. The Arbitron ratings are the best for Zed. And in those days, who knew anything about FM radio?
Yeah.
AM was the big deal.
Yeah, imagine that.
KBR was the big show, but hey, times have changed.
Well, I remember once you asked me to be guest on your show, and I showed up, and you weren't there. And I had to put an all-points bulletin for Lou D'Alessandro to be on his own show.
An APB.
Well, in any event, folks, here we are, and it's as I say, the first show of the new year. We're very pleased to have you back with us, and we always welcome your participation. Call us at any time at 640-3091 to participate with us. We have two great guests tonight. We have Will Stewart, Ward 2 Alderman, serving the city of Manchester very well. And we have his son Zeke, who is a outstanding person in his own right, a student at, Smith Road School. Yeah. And Zeke was a big help in his father's campaign. Yeah. And we can talk about that. We'll talk about some of the city issues with Will. I thought, though, we might start off talking about the fact that we opened both houses of the Great and General Court today in Concord. I don't know what happened on your side of the wall, but some interesting things happened on our side. You want to tell us about your reaction to the initial day?
Well, I thought on the Senate side it went very smoothly. Just extended the hours of the days to sign off on your prime bills, because so many bills have been offered in the Senate.
Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary to have that many bills in the first session.
So how much is it extended to?
To the 19th. So it's
that's
another
good.
week.
Yeah.
And if you're a co-sponsor, it's the original sign-off period. So I had a new president of the Senate, and it's an unusual set of circumstances, and I've witnessed it. This is three times already since I've been in the Senate, where the incumbent Senate president has been defeated, goes back and sits in his or her normal seat, and is replaced. And Donna Soucy is our new president.
Our own Manchester senator.
Right. And Chuck Morse has gone back to his seat in the Senate. That happened when Junie Blaisdell passed away, and Bev Hollingworth took his seat as president of the Senate. It happened when Tom Eaton resigned and Ted Gatsas became president of the Senate. Mm-hmm. It happened when Senator Bragdon resigned and Chuck Morse became president of the Senate.
My goodness.
So think of that.
A lot of history there.
A lot of history, and the fact that I've been in the Senate for 20-plus years, and I've served under 10 presidents, which is really, when you think of it, quite remarkable, because presidents of the Senate in the old days would serve 2, maybe 3 terms, but sometimes they only serve 1.
And you're back now to chair Senate Finance.
I'm back to chair Senate Finance.
And you know that gig very well. You've done it.
Done that before, done it a couple of times before. But we had a nice, reasonable session. The Democrats and the Republicans got along smoothly. A transition in the majority leader from Jeb Bradley to Dan Feltus, and that was very, very easily
An
done.
outstanding person, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we march on. I think two guys who really quality
Yep.
guys, and so we move forward. And I was over to your side, and my God, I saw more weapons in the gallery today than I've ever seen in my life. Everybody, everybody had a pistol. It was amazing.
Absolutely
amazing.
I got to talk about that, Lou, because that was the big issue in this initial session of the House. I guess you do in the Senate, certainly in the House. The first thing we do is to vote on the rules we want to govern ourselves by.
Yeah.
This is before we get our bills that may become law or may not. We get the rules. And there are a number of rule changes. Most of them are fairly innocuous and not terribly contentious. But obviously, the one that was when the Democrats are in, they think we should not allow people to carry weapons in the House or the House gallery, which is the only part of the building we control. By the way, has the Senate got a ban on carrying in the Senate?
You know, it's never come up in the Senate. To be honest with you, as long as I've been in the Senate, it's never been an issue. It's never been brought up. Now, I must tell you this, that I do know that people in the Senate have carried it. We've known that for a long time, but it's very few people. But we've never talked about it, to the best of my knowledge.
How have
never
you
gone
avoided
over any
that?
rules.
That's astounding.
Yeah, it is astounding.
With all the uproar just across the wall.
Well, just shows you the great camaraderie among the 24 members of the Senate.
Well, I hope it continues because.
Listen, it will be what it will be. What it will be. You know that.
Well, here's what I want to say about this issue of the carrying of weapons in the House and the House gallery. And this is the big divide between. It basically was a very partisan issue.
Yes.
Very few Democrats support the idea that you should be able to be armed in the House or the chambers or the gallery. Very few Republicans think you should be unarmed, apparently, in the House chamber or the gallery. And it's just a huge, huge partisan divide. And the division is over. The Republicans think that if you're armed, you're going to be safer. That's a safety precaution. They talk about, marching in the dark down to the store's garage or wherever your car's parked, and, you need to carry to, be able to shoot somebody that's going to attack you. Or maybe somebody would come into the House floor and charge the Speaker's podium, and you should be armed and be able to fire back. The Democrats, and certainly I'm in this group, there's no doubt about it, think that the more guns you have, the more dangerous you are. And that played out, and it was fiery. It was fiery. I think it seemed to, at one point during the debate, it seemed like every single Republican was going to want to speak to this issue. When we got done with the whole debate, and the decision was that we were going to return to the rule we had when Terry Norelli was Speaker, and not allow carrying of weapons into the House chamber, pretty much every Republican, as far as I could see, maybe it was even every Republican, wanted to get up and file a protest against our vote. And I have to tell you, I'm sure in the Senate, because you're all, more distinguished and higher ranking, and not higher paid, but higher ranking. But I have never heard the level of rhetoric I hear on this issue. I mean, we heard about shootings in Nigeria. What's that got to do with, whether we should have guns in the State House in New Hampshire? And it just absolutely shocking to me that there's such a terrific partisan divide on this. And the other thing I'll tell you, Lou, that was a tremendous shock to me today, because I did not see this coming. Now that we're in the majority, we get to caucus in the House Reps Hall. We don't have to go across the LOB. And I looked around and I saw, hey, we're all seated in sections 1, 2, and 3. There's nobody in sections 4 and 5. And you know what? We're ending the practice that we'd had for the last 2 terms of interspersed Democrats and Republicans. We're not sitting mingled anymore. We're divided, as you know, the saying is across the aisle. I have my friends across. Well, we're literally back to that, where all the Republicans are going to be on one side of the aisle, and all the Democrats are going to be on the other side of the aisle. And I was quite astounded by that, and I asked, and apparently our new Speaker, Steve Shurtleff, had been advised that the Republicans wanted it that way, that they requested it. Why would they do that? I don't know. I mean, to me, this is kind of a loss. We all want to have a more bipartisan approach. We want to have people work across, as the saying goes, and now it's literally true again, across the aisle. And here we have done away with one effort to try and do that by having the Democrats and the Republicans seated next to each other and around each other. Now we're going to be separated by an aisle. I don't know how people feel about that. I don't know how you feel about that, Lou. That really took me aback. I also have heard that in the last session there were some, unfortunately, we're not as bad as Congress, but there is still a lot of very hyper-partisanship in our House. We have 400, you have 24. It's easier to be more collegiate when you got 24, I think. Is. But with 400, there were instances where some Democrats felt, quite intimidated, in some cases oppressed by the Republicans sitting around them. So apparently that was part of the reason. Number one, the Republicans asked to be, segregated in their own sections of the State House. And number two, the Democrats, some of them felt that they didn't feel comfortable with the Republicans they were sitting with. That's a sad thing. I mean, I just think that's not a good start. And I don't know who to blame for it. I think our speaker's a wonderful guy. But that took me totally by surprise. And I just have to mention that. And I wish it was, there was a wonderful word we use for the when we get along called comedy. Yeah. It's a good Latin word, I'm sure. It's a Latin word, comitas.
Comitas, yes.
You can think of some other derivatives. But in the interest of comedy, I wish we had continued to be seated amongst our Republican colleagues. And I also heard maybe there's some Republicans that think that some of their less secure members might be influenced to become Democrats. May it be so. But whether that is so or not, I was quite an amazing thing that we had today. And the debate on the gun issue is, to me, I love to say, fully tongue-in-cheek, Lou, every day I'm in the House of Representatives in the great and general court, and you hear nothing but reasoned discourse, right? It's like Platonic discourse, high level, and who was the great lawmaker in Athens? Solomon the Wisdom? No, that's the Bible. I don't know. But in any event, it seemed to me that the debate today descended into pretty raw and very illogical things, and it did the last time we had the same debate too. But in any event, the ban is back. The House has again said this House is going to be a place where we're not going to permit carrying of weapons. And there's a lot of issue, and one speaker got up and said, "You may pass your rule, but I'm still packing heat." All right. Are we going to send the sergeant at arms to take him down? I don't think so. But, we hope that people will comply with the rules as we've adopted them, even though they vigorously disagree. And the real issue is, are you safer with everybody in the House, or not everybody, but lots of people packing heat, or are you safer if they don't? And I like to say I suggested a great test. Maybe I put this out here before, but you may like this, Lou. I said, let's test this out. We have these games you play with paint guns, and you go out in the woods and you play, hunter. And I said, let's give everybody a paint gun. And then have somebody say, sometimes in the next 3 sessions, somebody's going to come down the well and go right after the speaker's podium. And we'll all have our paint guns, and let's see how that goes. We are the median age in the House is 66. I'm on the wrong side of that, folks. Sorry. And let's see how we get our paint guns and see how well we do.
Well, it's
see how it goes.
It's a worthy request. Let's put it that way.
I'd love to try it. Well, but in any event, I do want to get to Will and Zeke and talk about the things that, beyond the State House and the government of the state of New Hampshire, and talk about what's happening in the wonderful Queen City that we're so proud to call home. And Will, you're a alderman representing Ward 2. And this
is my first year.
And this is your first term?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been in office, I think, a year tomorrow.
I assume and hope you're planning to run to have this office again?
That is the plan.
Okay.
This
first year is kind of a learning. The first term is kind of a learning thing, right?
It certainly is, and it's definitely been entertaining. In turns, frustrating, from time to time. But overall, it's been rewarding.
Yeah.
And been able to, get some things done and represent my constituents, and but recognizing that to really change things and get things accomplished. It takes time, and so I think I'd like another term to.
Has it been more rewarding or more frustrating?
Depends on the day, Bob. I'll tell you. Overall, I'd say, in all seriousness, it's been rewarding. It really has.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good to hear.
And I know, Will, you have another very important job for the future success of our state and our city, Stay Work Play, where you're the executive director. And that's so important because we are so concerned about maintaining, I think the biggest problem we have in New Hampshire is our workforce and keeping young people coming to be wanting to call New Hampshire home. Talk about some of what you're doing with that and how it's going.
Sure. So it's going well. So Stay Work Play, as you know, is a statewide nonprofit whose mission is to attract and retain more young people here in New Hampshire, and that's needed for a few reasons. One, we're the second oldest state in the country, with one of the lowest unemployment rates, 2.5%, as of last month. So we need people to fill the jobs that our companies need. And that our towns need, that our state needs, in volunteer positions and nonprofit positions to run for public office. So for the future of our state, we need more people in general and more young people in particular. We're also the number one exporter of high school graduates who are seeking four-year degrees. We export 59% of high school graduates who want a four-year degree leave the state to go pursue that degree. Now, some of them come back, but a lot of them don't.
Right.
So that's kind of why Stay Work Play is around and why we exist. We went through a strategic planning process this year, and recognizing the need that we need to remain relevant, and we want to be more impactful and really move the needle on getting more young people not just to stay here but to move here too. Again, our mission is to attract and retain. So one of the things since we're talking about the legislature today that you and your colleagues in both houses will be seeing Stay Work Play up in Concord, to advocate on issues that are important to young people. And, I always like to mention that this will be, nonpartisan, we're a nonpartisan group, and this will be issues-based advocacy, and really based on data. Stay Work Play, we actually commissioned a survey about a year ago to really get data on, what factors do young people take into consideration when making the decision to leave New Hampshire or to stay. And so we got some numbers back on that, and so kind of the big issues that we'll be focused on in Concord, those that have kind of a public policy implication, will be housing affordability, student debt, and on kind of the con side, things we need to work on, and then on kind of the pro side, the things that we need to preserve, kind of New Hampshire's outdoor and recreational opportunities, and kind of protecting those assets as well. So big reasons people stay.
Right.
Well, that's great. So we will be seeing you up there talking about these things. Is there some legislative initiatives you're pursuing to advance these things?
Well, and this will be our first year to get involved in advocacy. So really, in this the first year of the biennium, we're going to take more of a reactive approach. Senator D'Alessandro talked about all the bills that are being filed, and lots of them this year, more so than usual, it seems. So we'll be reactive, seeing what gets filed, and kind of evaluating those based on our kind of those public policy priority areas I mentioned, and then really looking toward 2020 to perhaps be a little bit more proactive and find some sponsors and introduce some legislation.
Okay, real good. So you're also now an alderman, serving a first term, representing Ward 2. What are the big things that you're concerned about as regards our Queen City? What are the big issues you're working on, and how do you see them working out?
It's funny, and I'm sure it was the same for both of you when you ran for office. There are issues that are going to be issues, and then some that are just take you completely by surprise. For example, when I was knocking on doors back in the summer and fall of 2017, I heard all about things, like, schools in Manchester. I heard about speeding on these one-way, two-lane, superhighways known as Maple and Beach Street. Heard about those. Heard about some of the flooding issues, in the North Maple, North Beach area. Some things, just kind of come out of nowhere, or at least unforeseen, or people aren't really talking about them, and they become issues, and some serious, some not so serious. On the not so serious side, this summer, you may have read or seen probably all of the dead squirrels Remember seeing all those dead
Right,
squirrels
right.
on the
Yeah,
side
the
of the road?
squirrels were everywhere.
Right,
Yeah.
they were.
And so I, you know,
My life in my hand sometimes breaking to help a squirrel
Yeah.
across the road and people tooting at me from behind.
yeah,
Get
suicidal
going.
squirrels out there, and
Suicidals, right.
you know, so I mean, I never expected to get calls saying,
Right.
"Hey, Alderman, can you get this dead squirrel out? You know, shovel it up from in front of my house."
Right.
And you know, so I didn't see things like that coming. You know, so it's been fun though. You know, all in all.
Well, it seems that a couple of things have become very serious as they relate to Manchester and this state work play. Let me try to integrate it into this, and that's the education process. It's really come under great scrutiny, I think, by the businesses and by the citizens of the city. You see banner headlines in the Union Leader, and never been one of the great supporters of the Union Leader, and they certainly
Or they're the greatest supporters of you either.
they haven't loved me, but you're reading these stories, and anecdotally, that problem at the Webster Street School, the Webster Elementary School, and I know that Principal Murphy is now the interim person. Very good friend of mine. She was the principal at Parker Varney, was the principal at Beach, a wonderful, wonderful educator. But Murph served her time, and I spoke with her this evening, and you know she's ready to get out of there and have a permanent replacement. But that particular issue has gone on and on and on. It began quite some time ago, and it's still festering. Then you get the situation, that banner headline again in the paper about the absentee rate. The absentee rate. Now, I'm a teacher. I have been involved with education since I graduated from college, and one of the things that you never did was you never missed school. I mean, you just couldn't do it. I was a teacher and a coach at the same time in both the public schools up at Kennett High School in Conway and at Bishop Bradley High School here in Manchester. And that really concerned me when I read that. Now, I think I should get into more detail and should talk to people like yourself or members of the school board as to actually what's going on. But we've worked hard in the legislature to do positive things for the schools. And when the money became available through the Governor's Fund for Safety, I know that I worked hard with those members of that committee to get money for Manchester. We got well over $1 million for Manchester to make the schools safer. And yet, what you're hearing, again, in the public domain are the negative things with regard to the schools. And we've got to stop that. They're good schools. My children went through these schools, went kindergarten, grammar school, middle school, and graduated from Manchester High School West. If we can't create a situation where there's a positive attitude about education, these people that we're looking for to come in here, they're not going to come, or they'll come and they'll live elsewhere.
You're absolutely right. I think there's perception and there's reality.
Yes.
And I think both need to be addressed. I mean, Manchester schools do have issues that need to be addressed, and I think that we can't bury our heads in the sand.
Right.
We are, one of the lowest funded schools, per capita in the state. I think we are the lowest or second lowest, per capita funding, per pupil funding in the state. That's an issue. On the other hand, I think that you're right. When we focus so much on the negative, that sends a message.
Yes.
To people who are considering moving here, and it's something that business leaders are concerned with.
Sure.
Because if they want to lure employees here,
Right.
the first question that people generally speaking in their 30s on up are going to ask are, how are the schools?
Yes.
And that's the number one factor on property values in the city.
Right.
Even if you don't have kids, you should be
Yeah.
concerned about it.
Right.
And so
And hence we have Manchester Proud, which I think is one of the most exciting initiatives we've had in the city in a long time. I really applaud Barry Brenzinger and Bob Baines and Arthur Sullivan and the others who are active in that. I think that there's no more important agenda that we need to pursue in this city right now.
Yeah, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the results of that initiative, and I do applaud them and encourage them. And to your point, Senator, too, I'll say that I've made the decision to raise my son here in Manchester,
Sure.
and he's in local schools, and a second grader right now at Smith Road School, and we're very happy, with the his mother and I with the education that he's receiving, here in the city. And I have no plans. Some people would ask, well, what about when he gets to middle school?
Right.
Hillside,
Yeah.
I don't know, Central,
Right.
But I have absolutely no plans to remove him. I think the education he's getting is first rate, and particularly the not just the academic education, but even the social education.
Sure.
And being in a diverse school district is an education in itself.
Yeah, you get an advantage there that's hard to duplicate by going to someplace that's not as diverse as Manchester. We have an asset there. I just think we can't say that enough. Yeah. Well, great. One of the issues that's been much in the news in Manchester, and Manchester's not unique in this. I just was traveling in the D.C. area and Chicago over the holidays, and it's true there as much as in Manchester. The evident homelessness of people, and there was this vigil a while ago to acknowledge the people who died in the homeless encampments or on the streets, and it's so sad and tragic. And what do you think we need? What are we doing on that, and what more do you think we need to do?
I think getting everyone on the same page,
Yeah.
first of all, is I think the first step that we need to know. When I say everybody, I mean not just policymakers, but the nonprofit community, the business community. I think there's kind of a lot of misinformation of what's happening and what's not happening. I think there's a lot more happening than people understand and recognize. There may be lack of coordination in some cases. There's certainly lack of funding in a lot of cases, but we all need a clearer picture and need to agree on what's happening so we can see what needs to happen. I don't pretend to be an expert in homelessness, but I know enough to know that this is an extremely complex issue.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certainly the economic end of things, but there's also the substance misuse end of things. There's the mental
Right.
health end of things, and they all kind of come together. And one of the things in the limited study I've done so far, and I'm trying to educate myself, excuse me, as much as I can, especially since this has become more of an issue in recent months, is what I've learned is that you can't just treat one of those things. It has to be
The whole package.
Yeah, you need a full court press on this
Right. No question.
if we want to make lasting
Right.
and sustainable success.
Yeah.
Well, we may have a call on question one. You want to hit one and see if Eric's with us?
This one?
Yeah. Hey, Eric, are you with us?
Eric?
Hello.
Yes, hello?
Yep.
Hi, you're
Go
on the
ahead, Eric.
Progress Report Live, and we're happy to have you join us. You can go
Oh,
right
thank
ahead.
you. I'm a property owner here in Manchester,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen superintendents come and go.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to get your feeling about the Superintendent Vargas right now. How do you think he's doing? And I wish someone could come up, wave the magic wand to make Manchester schools as good as they were at one time. And keep up the good work, guys. I don't have the answer, but I hope someone comes up with one.
Well, I think
Before we lose investors to the city.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you for calling, Eric. Those are good questions.
Yeah, I think very, very
You
good
want to
question.
take a crack at those? I mean, you're not on the school committee, but you do hold the purse strings for the
Right.
school district.
Yeah, and it is kind of a weird relationship
Right.
between the school board and the board of mayor and aldermen, where we can both basically point at each other as to
Right.
why things are the way they are sometimes. But I'll say and what I know of Superintendent Vargas, Dr. Vargas seems to be highly capable and very enthusiastic, and seems to be, from where I'm sitting, doing a good job. With regard to schools now, education in the city, what it is now, what it was back then, whenever back then was, I'll say too, I don't think Manchester has an education problem. We don't. I think Manchester has a poverty problem, and I think what takes place in the schools is sometimes that's the symptom. That the disease is poverty, and until we can get a better grasp on poverty here in the city, which is an issue, we're going to see those effects playing out in the school. So I think, and again, like homelessness, a very complex issue that there's no one silver bullet for.
I think you're exactly right. I think, I look at median family income for the district that I represent, and it's much lower in Manchester than it is in the surrounding area. I mean, that manifestation is really exorbitant when you talk about a place like Bedford, where what's like, I think, median family is about 150. If we get to 60, we're lucky. And even the town of Goffstown has a median family income much larger. But the thing that I'm noticing, and as an alderman, I think that has a direct correlation with poverty, the number of single-family households, the number of female head of households, the number of homeless children, and I think that's a guess, and what we do to address those situations. And basically, the schools are the place where they have to be addressed, because you have to educate kids, so they got to come from someplace, right? And if they're homeless, you bring them to the school. At the school, you feed them breakfast, you feed them lunch. If it's a Century 21 school, they stay there in the afternoon, and they're given a snack or something before they go. So those problems are clear. It's clear they're there. Now, how do we address them? Interesting. I'm on the fiscal committee in the legislature, and the number of TANF families has grown. Now, with a 2.4 or 2.4 plus unemployment rate, you'd think the number of families receiving temporary assistance to needy families would be dropping, but it's growing. It's growing, and indeed, all of the things that we've talked about here, the manifestation shown in the schools, the homeless kids, the low median family income, that's a direct result of the increase in the need for TANF, and that's counterintuitive when you talk about the economy. And if that is the case, then we with this robust economy have got to spend more to take care of these problems. And there's been a reticence to do that.
But it's absolutely necessary. You're right.
Yes.
I mean, if a kid is hungry,
Got to feed him.
The kid can't learn if he's hungry.
Absolutely.
If a single parent is working 2 jobs, just to pay rent, that parent's probably not around in the afternoon or evening to make sure little Johnny's doing his homework.
Right.
And things that my son Zeke is lucky enough to have 2 parents and a grandmother in his life every day who are there to make sure he does his homework, and we're able to give him those extras, to take him to the science museum, to take him to the history museum, to give him karate lessons and things like that. Advantages that kids in districts like Bedford and Goffstown, Hollis and Wyndham and Londonderry, that's much more prevalent than it is those challenges. They just don't have those challenges there. To say nothing of the language challenges that are seen in our schools as well.
Went to a classroom at Hillside. There was not one English speaker with their native tongue in that class. Not one person.
Really? At Hillside?
Yes, at Hillside. And they were from all over the world. And the most recent student in the class came from China. And there was certainly mixed races there also. And Pat O'Neill, who's a terrific teacher, was dealing with those kids, and he's been doing this for a number of years. And that situation, obviously, if you look at it on one side, it's what makes your nation great. You're bringing in all different cultures, and they're having a synergistic relationship, and they're becoming part and parcel of the new America, which we're part and parcel of. But indeed, if you're not addressing those needs properly, you're missing a tremendous opportunity. And I think this is the thing that I visit every school in this district that I represent every year.
Really?
Right. Every school in Goffstown and my schools, these schools in Manchester. And as I said, my children went to those schools. And then I looked at that absentee rate, and I looked at where it occurred.
Yeah.
And it's on my side of the river. That's not a good thing.
Hey, this may be a good time to
let's
see if
bring
Zeke, would you like to chip in here? I have this lovely thing you gave me, your palm card. You helped in your father's campaign. Zeke Stewart, Alder kid. I love that. The program is better playground, later bedtimes, and more dessert.
Definitely his platform. So I'll give you a little background.
That is definitely his platform.
Yeah.
But you can give me a little background. But I want to ask him about what's life for him like at Smith Road School. I mean, do you like your school? Do you have interesting different types of kids there? Tell us a little bit. How's life for you at Smith Road School?
When I was in first grade, somebody in my class was from China.
Really?
Mhm.
Did this person speak English?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any people at Smith Road who do not speak English?
Nope.
Okay. You were in a school, it's somewhat different because I guess there are plenty of schools in Manchester where there are kids that don't speak English or don't speak it well.
There are certainly more diverse schools, but I'm happy to say that even Smith Road, has
Sure.
has diversity, which is great to see, and one of the things that I'm, that I see as a major advantage of having, Zeke in Manchester Public Schools.
So Zeke, did you get to be friends with this Chinese guy, and was he an interesting person to meet?
Yeah.
Yeah? Did you learn anything about China from him? Or about Chinese language or anything?
No, not really.
No.
Well, there may still be time.
Right.
Let's see if we have a call from Eddie. I guess we're not taking a break today. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Eddie. We're always welcome. Welcome on the Progress Report. If this is the Eddie I think it is, welcome back.
Yeah, it is. It is, Bob. Hey, listen. I'm listening to your discussion, right? And you're talking about issues like poverty, right?
Yeah.
And children that are going without, and you're talking about the economy.
Yeah.
And Senator said, it's counterintuitive because the economy's humming along, the unemployment rate is so low.
Yeah.
But I think maybe you're missing the larger point here. A lot of the children that are going without, a lot of the dysfunctional families, it's not because the parents are out there looking for work and they can't find a job. It's not because they have low wages. It's not because they're working two jobs. It's because the people are so dysfunctional. People are procreating and having children that clearly shouldn't be. They're not capable of raising children. And I think when you said that there should be more spending, there should be more social programs, more funding. By having all these programs like TANF and all the social welfare programs, you're perpetuating a very nasty situation. Do you understand that?
Well, I have to disagree with you. TANF was the result of a change in how we dealt with people on welfare. It was, aid to families with dependent children was changed to TANF, temporary assistance to needy families.
It's a whole alphabet soup. I realize this.
Well, I don't know if it's alphabet soup, but it's a.
The more welfare programs you have, you're encouraging people to procreate who should not be procreating.
No, I don't.
Right,
no.
and you're always going to have these. You're going to multiply the problem. Also, you just said a while ago, you said the diversity in the city, it's great, it's an asset. Now you're talking about the language barriers. It's a big problem. Well, which one is it? When you say diversity, do you mean racial diversity? Is that what you mean?
I mean diversity, period. Diversity.
Well, what did Bob mean? Bob, you talk about diversity. Do you mean racial diversity? Is that what you mean?
That's part of it, but it's not just that. It's
No.
diversity of ethnicity and of a religion and
Okay,
all the
that's-
things
all right,
that
that's terrific.
all the things that we bring to this country as the great melting pot, and the place that
Yeah.
melting gets done more than any other places in our public schools.
Okay, well, it's confusing following you because then 5 minutes later was the language barrier in the schools was brought up as a big problem.
It's not a barrier.
None of the kids spoke English.
But it's an opportunity.
So is it an asset or not?
It's an opportunity to learn. Sure, it's an asset. One of the things that we should be teaching in our schools, I think, is we should be a multi-language society. People should speak more than just English. That's an important thing. When I came to Manchester, we were a French-speaking city.
Right.
We were a French-speaking city.
Yeah.
You were downtown on Thursday nights
You heard a lot of
in the
French.
stores, and you heard a lot of French.
There was French language newspapers, French language radio.
There was nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong with that. But indeed, our charge is to teach English as a second language so that these people can assimilate into our society. I mean, that's what America supposedly is all about. My grandparents came from Italy. They were not English speakers. They learned English. and they became part of the society. And that's the blending that we want to take place in the society. Obviously, these people come here because they see opportunity. They see opportunity for their families.
Yeah.
They see opportunities
All right,
for themselves.
I'm watching the show, and it's hard to follow because on the one, you're mentioning diversity is great, and I assume you mean racial diversity. 5 minutes later, you're talking about how much of a problem it is that the kids in the school don't speak English. So
I didn't say how much of a problem.
Not a
it was.
problem.
about the economy,
It's
homelessness, and
It's not a problem. It's a challenge that can benefit us all as we meet it.
Right, and everything. It's not.
All right.
Those two things aren't mutually exclusive either. Yes, it's an asset. But sometimes those do come with challenges. And when you have folks who speak dozens of languages, yes, it's a challenge. But I think overall, it's a net plus for the city.
You probably heard this one, but I'll ask you guys. What do you call somebody that speaks 3 languages?
What?
Trilingual.
Trilingual.
What do you call somebody that speaks 2 languages?
Bilingual.
What do you call somebody that speaks 1 language?
An American.
American. Very good. We are impoverished in our language skills in this
We are,
country.
we
I
are,
mean,
we
I look at my daughter-in-law, who's from Hong Kong. She speaks Mandarin and Cantonese and English fluently.
Yeah.
And her parents do too. I mean, it's, and
All right, have a good night, guys.
thanks
Thank
for
you.
calling,
You too.
Eddie. We always
Yeah.
appreciate it. Okay.
Eddie.
It's amazing to me. I'm sure we're going to hear the governor's inaugural tomorrow in the chambers. You'll probably be there, Lou. I'll be there.
Yes.
We'll listen politely and applaud. We're supposed to. And he's going to talk about the great success of New Hampshire and the lowest, and he'll certainly cite the low unemployment rate we have. And yet, Will, as we drive about the city on these intersections, we'll have the people with the sign saying, homeless, need work, and they'll be right next to a sign the highway department said, please don't give to these people. Here's some charities you can give to. And people will say, well, what are these people doing? There's jobs available. Why are these people out there? They can get a job. There's no problem getting jobs in New Hampshire now. The problem is filling the jobs that we have. And it just seems like such a conundrum. So can you talk to that about how are these people out there panhandling? When they look able-bodied, they're able to climb up on a curb and hold a sign. What's going on?
Yeah, we had at the most recent Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, Maureen Beauregard, the Executive Director of Families in Transition and New Horizons Shelter, kind of the combined outfit now, made the point, and I think it's worth repeating, that there is no need for anyone to give money, to give cash or even food for that matter. And it's talk about counterintuitive. I mean, it's particularly at this time of year, the holiday season. Your heart bleeds, for folks. But as Maureen said, we're not doing anybody any favors by just giving them money. I mean, yes, maybe some of them are spending it on food or rent or something like that. But oftentimes, as has been seen, it can be used and often is for drugs and alcohol, and you're really not doing anybody any favors. They're saying, if people need food, if they need a roof over their head, those resources exist here in the city, and we need to direct those folks to those resources, and by giving money and even by giving food, as pure as the motive may be, and people do mean well, they do, and I get it, and I used to be one myself. I used to do the same thing, give both food and money, but now I've seen that what Maureen says is true, and so the key is to direct those people to the resources that exist here in the city, and to get them into the system, and to get them connected with services that can help them not just with their immediate need, which is to eat right now, but to help them get back on their feet in a more sustained and permanent way.
Do we, I mean, the city of Manchester and the aldermen, do they have an idea of who these people are and why they're out there? Are they suffering from addiction? Are they suffering mental illness? I mean, they look able-bodied. What is? I mean, you said it's a complicated problem. I'm sure it is.
Certainly is.
And what data do we have to suggest what the underlying causes of this is?
Well, that's one of the reasons I mentioned kind of the need, and my colleague Tim Baines, who represents Ward 3, which is of course downtown. Is kind of really taking the lead on this issue as downtown really seems to bear the brunt.
Yeah, parked right outside his restaurant.
Correct, and not just his, but others as well.
Sure,
sometimes right
others
outside this building,
Right.
Wrapped up in blankets and
blankets,
sleeping
shopping
bags.
carts, and
So, as far as the ultimate, I can only speak for myself, and I certainly know, and I suspect it's true of a number of my colleagues, is that we are still in the process of learning. I think the professionals, in the nonprofit social services community, certainly Maureen Beauregard first among them, they know these folks. They know their stories. They know where they're coming from.
Well, her story is very compelling because she comes from a history of some problems herself, and she's become a tremendous contributor to this city.
Correct. And I hesitate to give the number, but I want to say, the last I heard, from her during the presentation in the chambers was it was about half and half, as I recall, of folks who were on the street who were from Manchester, but many of them aren't.
That's right. Yeah,
And
Because we have services.
correct, and that's an issue too. And she said, and I've heard her say it. I've heard Police Chief Carlo Capano say it too. That I always thought it was kind of a rumor before. He said that but it's definitely a thing where people in Laconia, say,
Yes,
or other towns will give their folks who need services, need opioid treatment, need really any type of service they can't provide those there in the small towns, with a bus ticket to Manchester, or even
yeah.
Uber fare or taxi fare
Right.
to Manchester, because this is where we have the services. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have the services. We should. We need them. But I think that there's a responsibility that surrounding towns and even beyond surrounding towns are kind of using Manchester for, and we kind of have to bear the brunt of that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
which needs to be addressed too.
Sure. There's no question what you say is true. I've seen that situation develop, and I've also seen the homeless housing in Manchester. Been at the food kitchen in Manchester, served at the food kitchen in Manchester, and did notice the fact that when they give away the food on that one particular day, these people come from all over the state to get that. So the fact that we give these services is an important issue. But I think the fundamental issue, it goes to this: how do you take people from that spot and get them back into life? And mental health has become a significant problem. In the recent past, and I'm saying the recent past is 25, 30 years ago, we housed them at New Hampshire Hospital.
Right.
We had 3,000 people living there.
Yep.
Or we housed those people at Laconia State School.
We warehoused them.
We warehoused them. We made a decision in the late 1970s to deinstitutionalize. And we created a program that was going to deal with these people that were released back into the communities. And it worked out extremely well as long as we funded it. When we stopped funding it, it dissipated. And as a result of that, we're suffering the consequences today. That's Greater Manchester Mental Health, it's Riverbend and Concord. They're all in need. And the population that they're serving has grown. But when you look at it, it's relatively the same numbers in the past. We have a population that's grown from 500,000, 600,000 to 1.3 million. Well, the problems grow in direct proportion.
Right.
And
But proportional.
But you got to deal with them. You got to deal with them. And I think that's the thing that we haven't done. We haven't, as a society, and this is not just New Hampshire, but all over the country, we haven't recognized what a problem mental health is. We haven't recognized what bullying in schools produces. Those things have become more apparent as time has gone on, and those are societal problems that we have to deal with.
And I'll say, I will say, I'll agree with you that these are things that are seen, across,
Yes.
the United States. I will say, where New Hampshire, falls into it. One of my criticisms of New Hampshire and Manchester too has been, we're penny wise and pound foolish. And that there are some places we can make investments, and I use that word investments very precisely because you get a return on an investment, a social return.
Yep.
And so, for example, with the issues that we're seeing now, playing out on Elm Street, those are issues among some that if we adequately funded services for the homeless, mental health services, substance misuse services, we could invest for shorter money up front, or we can pay more down the line when we don't. Because one way or the other, we're going to have to pay.
Yep.
So do you want to pay less on the front end or more on the back end?
Right.
And I think it's kind of the New Hampshire way to, say, we're not going to pay for it, but then you end up paying for it anyway.
You do.
We sure do.
And more so.
Yeah. So you started out here, I think, earlier on, talking about how we were kind of, or did you? I can't remember. Was this we were talking in the green room or here? That the opioid crisis, there's beginning to be some hopeful signs that the wave is kind of crested, that the overdoses are down.
Knock on wood.
Hopefully.
The fatalities are down, and got a long way to go, but we have some signs that we're beginning to see some progress at long last after a long time, right?
Correct.
And you think we can get to that point with regard to the homeless that we see troubling our city so many places?
Yeah, I certainly think it's possible, and I think kind of the opioid crisis is case in point. Is that when an issue becomes hot enough, people
You address
react,
it, right.
and it gets people to come together and work together, pool resources and act in a coordinated fashion. I think we started to see that with the opioid issue. And I was telling you back in the green room that the alderman just got an email today with the end of year 2018 calendar year opioid statistics, and basically
give us those. I guess you didn't, but
yeah, I can pull them up here in a second. But
it was good to hear.
yeah, no, it's very reassuring in that it said for let's see, for 2018, suspected opioid overdoses are down 19%. From 2017. Suspected opioid deaths are down 22% from the previous year. So those are very, very encouraging results.
Yes.
I mean, I hope it's the beginning of a trend and
Sure.
not a blip. But it's certainly something to celebrate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, of course. And I
Can
think-
you talk a little about? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you. You were talking to me a bit about the relationship between our spectacularly innovative and apparently very useful Safe Station program and this
Yes.
hub and spoke system. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think we need to see more synergy between the two. We have a very successful Safe Station program in Manchester, and I think Dan Goonan and his colleagues at the fire department have done an amazing job,
Yep.
recognized nationally. When we started this hub and spoke program, there didn't seem to be a good, consistent talking to one another.
What is the hub and
came to
spoke
me.
system?
Well, this is the system that has been put in place by the governor. Got a very significant federal grant, and you can do everything. There's the hub that recognizes the problem, the people enter, and then there's the ability to send them to different entities immediately to take care of their need. That's a very
see.
that's
Okay.
a very minimalist appreciation of
Okay.
the program. But that's how it's supposed to work, and that's going to be great if you see it in operation and it does work. But again, who funds it when the federal money runs out?
Yeah.
That's the big issue. And this was a $22 million initial grant around the state, and they've created a number of these situations. But let's talk about a couple of positive things that we've done with regard to opioids. We now watch script, and we watch who gives the script, and we watch the amount of script that's given. That's very important because script was one of the base problems for the crisis. People were becoming addicted to opioids that were prescribed to them.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
you
understand.
got to address that situation. I think we're doing a much better job of doing that now. We were one of the last states in the United States to put that system in place where we could check who's doing the script and monitor them. Once you get a handle on that and you get a handle on the prescriptions, then I think you've got a base group that you can deal with because you know who they are and you know how they're getting their resource. If you can confine that and eliminate that, that makes a great deal of sense. Then it's the people on the street who have to get our attention. And they've made fentanyl and they've made these other opioids a business. It's a marketing and sales business. And that's what it's turned into. And we've got to address that, and we've got to stop that. I went to a couple of stops in Laconia and actually saw this happening, where they were cooking drugs in an apartment. They had heroin, they had fentanyl, and they were a marketing site because they were moving it out the door and selling it. Police came and so forth and so on, and try to put a stop to it. But I mean, those are the things that we have to address, and that's where society plays a very significant role. Because when minorities were the only people affected by this crisis, it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, let's be honest.
That's the way it was with the crack
But
stuff.
now it's everywhere. And it's in every family, regardless of your financial status. And as a result, it is truly society's problem, and we have to deal with it. So we've done some positive things. We have to continue to do these positive things. We've got to address the mental health situation. We've got to get children out of New Hampshire Hospital into a better residential situation, better treatment. Those things have to come, and I know that Jeff Myers is working on that. We'll be working on that as we develop the budget. But those are things that we can address. We can address if we have the desire to do it, and if we have the courage of our convictions. I mean, if we believe it, then we'll do it.
Yep. Well, we're almost done here, Will and Zeke. It's been great to have you with us, and there's a lot more I'd like to talk about
Thanks for
with
having
you.
us.
And one is we didn't get to it, but one of the things that's very interesting to me is our transportation issues in the city. Is our bus service really meeting the needs of the people in the city now? And can we possibly get commuter rail here, which I think would be a huge boon to the city of Manchester if we can? I don't know. You want to say anything about those issues very quickly, because we're pretty much at the end, but if you do, I'll give you a shot.
Those are pretty complex issues. Maybe we can save that for the next episode.
Well, maybe we better do that. And
Right now, it's fill the potholes.
right now, it's fill the potholes.
That's doable.
Maybe change the traffic patterns on Beach and Maple. I don't know.
Yes, sir.
And I want to thank you, Will, for coming in. I know it was fairly short. And Zeke, thank you for coming in and being part of our show. It's great. I love your program here.
Vote Zeke.
Vote Zeke. And lifelong resident of Manchester, first grader at Smith Road, now a second grader. Very exciting. He's a mac and cheese connoisseur.
Right.
He has a 1,000,000-word challenge. I don't know what that is, but sounds impressive. Student of the month. Math superstar. Reading superstar. Hey, this kid is an alder kid for sure. Terrific. Great to have you with us, and we'll do it again soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being part of it, too.